Now there's one character in the Zelda series that's seen in almost every game and all the timelines. Tingle. But how does he do that? Why is he seen in so many different places? Is there more behind him than we might think? Now the first time that we saw him in the timeline was in the very first game, Skyward Sword. However, we only saw a doll. And the first time that we saw him as an actual human being was in the Minish Cap, which is still really early on in the timeline. But what could be the origin of this strange man? Well, there is an origin story for Tingle. However, there are some problems with it. The name of the story is The Legend of the Fairy, and is found in the Tower of the Gods in The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. It goes as following. It is said that long ago, a boy garbed in green, known as the Hero of Time, saved this land. However, on a certain island, there's also a story of a fairy who saved that hero. It is said that the Hero of Time met the fairy in the midst of his travels. The fairy appeared before the hero, who had found himself lost in darkness. With a mystic power, it would float in mid-air, dancing above his head like a burst balloon. After the fairy handed the lost hero a map, it flew off as quick as it had appeared. Better able to foresee places of danger than the hero, the fairy marked them on a map. The legend goes on to say that the quest of the Hero of Time was saved by this plump figure. Fairies live for thousands of years, but this odd fairy was a bit different. This mystical fairy was born near a lake, and when he met the hero, he was but 35. Beyond that, there is little known about that fairy. The little-known legend of the fairy's 35th birthday. On one island, they celebrate one's 35th birthday with a green coat and red pants. They do this in the hopes of becoming like the legendary fairy, Tingle. So this at least explains why we see Tingle in the Wind Waker and the others in that timeline that come after it. However, in the other timelines and games, it's still a mystery. And in this story, they are clearly talking about the events of The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask, since we see Tingle and the Hero of Time in that game. Also, the two stories are very similar. But how did this story end up in this tower then? First off, the Tower of Gods was created when Hyrule was flooded by the gods to test the courage of anyone who wished to wield the Master Sword and to prevent unworthy people from obtaining it. So how did it get there? Well, you can only collect the pages with the story on it if you use the Tingle tuner. So I think Tingle must have placed it there. And another problem, it's impossible that the story of Link and Tingle from Majora's Mask ended up there. Termina, the world in which the game is set, is created by the Skull Kid using Majora's power. His and Link's memories and experiences are what formed Termina's legends and the people of Termina itself. And once Link left, the world ceased to exist. It's a dream world like Koholint from The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. And yes, people, this is 100% canon. The book in which this is said was released and made by Nintendo. So how could anybody know about those events? Only Link should know about this, and he died long before the events of the Wind Waker, and these events didn't even happen in this timeline. Besides that, as far as we know, Skull Kid and Link had never seen Tingle. So how did he end up in their dream world? Also, how did Tingle even get into the Tower of the Gods? Only the hero could survive that, and he needs the pearls for that as well. Essentially, it is completely impossible that the Legend of the Fairy ended up there. But that's not the only weird thing. Remember that plushie from Tingle from Skyward Sword? Well, Link and everyone else had no idea who he was. They had never seen him before. Besides that, how is it possible that Tingle is always 35 in every single game? And what about his appearances in different universes? Since he appears on a wanted poster behind the counter of the milk bar in The Legend of Zelda: Phantom Hourglass. And this game is set in a completely different dimension. How? What makes this weird 35-year-old man so powerful and special? Well, let's go back to the weird legend about him for a second. It said fairies live for thousands of years, but Tingle is different. This mystical fairy was born near a lake, and when he met the hero, he was but 35. So could it be that Tingle is more powerful than we think? Well, it would explain everything. If he is a deity, then he could have planted those notes. It would also explain why he is seen everywhere throughout the timeline. If he really had powers, then he could most likely also go to Termina, and maybe he did this to help the hero out in this dark world. That's even how they bring it in the story. The Goddess of Time also helps Link in the game with turning back time, so maybe Tingle also tried to help out, but just played a smaller role in this. But what kind of deity could he be then? Well, his story is called The Legend of the Fairy, and he always talks about them. So, maybe a fairy of some sort. Well, it's certainly possible. They're powerful beings, and we have seen tons of special ones, and there are even some that look like humans. Like the many great fairies we have seen throughout the series, or the fairy queen that looks like a little girl. Or maybe when he was looking for a way to become a fairy, since he has been trying to become one for ages, he found some powerful magic that made him more than human. He has been messing around with some powerful magic after all. For example, the Kinstones from The Legend of Zelda the Minish Cap. These can do all kinds of things, big and small. Or the Force Gems that Tingle was collecting in The Legend of Zelda Four Swords Adventures. Yet again, powerful artifacts. If he really has powers, then it's most likely that he got them by looking for a way to become a fairy. So did he really become more than a normal human? For example, a powerful fairy or other deity of sorts. Well, it's the only option really, and this would also mean that his is real magic, or maybe not, since it doesn't do anything. The effects of Kulu Limpa and the Wind Waker are always random, including a ting or a Link homing Tingle Bomb. So if it's really magic, then it must have a random and unpredictable effect. So maybe he can't fully control his magic. So is he really a deity of sorts? Or at least more powerful than we thought? Well, who knows? It seems to be the only answer to all our questions. Hey there, be sure to check out my Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, and Discord server. We do all kinds of fun stuff there, so go check it out! Thanks for watching, everybody. This voiceover was complete hell to do, so I hope you all enjoyed it, or otherwise it was just pain and suffering for nothing.